Okay. Can I be heard? I actually have no idea. Okay, I assume nobody is watching this or looking at this, but I actually have no way of knowing. So anyways, I'm just going to be playing through Furi and kind of commentating it as I go. I think this game is super fun. I haven't played it in a couple years. The other night I reinstalled it and played it through once. Had a good time with it, but essentially it's been a couple years since I played, and waiting on something else to install right now, so have some time to kill. And just figured somebody somewhere down the line might enjoy watching this game played with some degree of talent, I guess. Now, a couple years ago, when I was quite into this game, I managed quite a good speedrun, and I think at the time I was like 300 or 400 all time on the leaderboard. Obviously, again, that was years ago. But I know a little bit about what I'm doing in this game. So this is the first boss. I think his name is the Chain. And pretty simple, straightforward boss. I'm just gonna have a good time with him, and then the game picks up more and more as you go on, of course. Unfortunately, that was decent. The unfortunate part of him being so straightforward and easy is that I don't have very much to say about him. Luckily, we're already more than halfway done with this fight, so I guess I can just talk about the way the game works if you don't know. So this whole game is just a boss rush. It's just 10 fights, and then there's one more in the DLC. This game is regularly on sale on all platforms for just a couple dollars. And as what I'm doing here, it's meant to be played and learned quickly and then kind of speedrun for smaller and smaller amounts of hits and done faster and with less deaths. So you can see how we're both doing, myself and the boss, in the corners. The top left-hand corner is my stats, the top right corner is the boss's stats. So you can see the figures underneath the health represent the lives of the boss. So, I can just do that, huh? I'm thinking about the star. That's a long ways away. So, here we go. So as I go through each phase, there's a kind of at range section and then a melee section, like what we're doing now. Typically goes, as we'll see, that the game inverts that setup quite a few times. Oh, thought I had the time there. Ah, fuck it. So now we'll see how I did. And we can see that compared to my previous one, I was 2 seconds slower on that boss, but I took 5 less hits than last time that I ran it. So overall, we're about on track with time, and doing really good on hits. So we'll just move on to the next one. As these bosses go on, they'll get much more complicated, which starts right away. As you're watching that one was very simple. This one will be immediately obvious that it's more complicated. Okay. So this is the strap. Oh shit. Dodged the wrong way there. I don't know all the names, which, given how much I've actually played this game, I probably ought to, but this one's a little tricky because it's hard to fight her exactly how you like to. Strictly the best thing to do is to stay right up in their face and use the gun and just unload bullets constantly, and use your you rebind to the controls so that you can parry with your left hand and continue shooting with the right. But because this boss has so many ranged attacks, especially in the first couple of phases, doing that is quite difficult, because if you try to close the distance, she'll just run away and go back to shooting at you. So we have to stay at distance, which will make this one a little bit slower than the previous one. Oh. So there's a couple of pillars throughout the arena that you can shoot, which will cause her to divert her attention over to them. The panels on the floor do that as well. We're going to try to preserve those because we need them later in the fight when she's going to try to stealth away from us, and we'll need to draw her back in quickly. So the parrying that I'm going to be doing throughout the duration of this playthrough is not as impressive as it looks at first. The bosses, before they hit, have a indicator where they kind of shine and they make a sound. And the timing on all except a couple of attacks in the game is about a half second after that indicator is when you parry. And that is consistent across, like I said, almost every boss, save for a couple of attacks. One of those attacks that is on a different timing is owned by this boss, and we'll see it later. I forget if it's this phase or the next one. It must be the next phase. Ah, shit. So this is quite a difficult and fairly demanding game. That was the one. That's the attack that's on a slightly different timing, where you need to press it immediately rather than a half second later. Like that. This is a fairly difficult and demanding game, but the lives on my end in the top left are one of the ways that it actually is trying to be more fair for you. So I start every fight with 3, as you see, and if I'm playing well, then I won't ever use any during this playthrough, but theoretically, every time you remove one of the boss's lives, you restore one of your own as well. So even worst case scenario, you always have at least 2 chances on every phase of every boss. So this is what I was talking about earlier, where she's going to disappear and we need to get her attention quickly and draw her back. So we're going to activate a bunch of these, and there we go. So we just kind of skipped a phase where we're supposed to sort of go looking around the arena until she sort of ambushes us, but because we played in such a way, we sort of skipped that. Whoa. We sort of skipped that particular... too early on that one. Okay, watch your shadow. When that shadow moves is when you have to dodge. That's just one of those things that you have to pick up after fighting this boss 1,000 times. Okay, so the last phase is always a big bullet hell section where they just spam their shots at us for a while, just like you saw with the first one. For the first couple bosses, these latter sections will be quite easy. As we get on in the game, we'll see that they become a lot more difficult. Oh yeah, I need to just This is on the normal difficulty mode. There is a hard difficulty mode, which I have played and beat once. But again, being a couple years out of practice, I don't feel confident in trying to publicly speedrun it. I missed my first strike there, that was weird. Okay, so we're losing a lot of time now. We're still okay on hits though, we're still below our last run, that's good. This is one of the ones, I have no idea what this guy's name is. This is one of the more interesting fights though, especially in the early game. Because as you can see, he just puts up this wall of mirrors that I have to penetrate. And every time I shoot it, I just create more projectiles for me to have to dodge. If I go quiet for extended periods, I apologize. This is a game that requires a lot of focus. I've never tried to live commentate a stream while also playing a game like this before. Actually never streamed a video game before, so yeah, brand new experience for me. So apologies if I am not doing it correctly or very well. Okay, we're almost there. So see, some people will try to like do a full 360 around this thing. Which just fills the entire arena with shots way quicker, whereas if I stay relatively in just a couple positions like this, you can see that as my bullets bounce back at me, I'm countering a lot of them just because all of my shots are coming from the same direction. So I can keep it relatively clean for myself. The other thing to do, which we'll do at the end of this fight, is you can charge your shots to cause them to do more damage. Which will obviously, since now you're shooting the mirrors less, they produce a lot less blowback because the just quantity of your shots that you're throwing at it has gone down. This section's quite tedious because you can only kind of do it at the speed the game will allow you to. As far as I've seen, there's not really a way to speed this one up. Wow, we're so close. There we go. Okay. Oh. If you try to shoot in this phase, it just freezes your bullets, so you have to be totally focused on melee at this point.
Not so fast.
That one was close. I was almost too early that time. Okay. Here's another example of why you want to rebind the controls. You'll see that I can... The typical dash button is X, which is on the right hand. the shoot button is the right analog stick, which is also the right hand. But I've rebounded the controls so that my dash is on L2 as well, which enables me to continue to shoot while also dashing. So I got through that phase very quickly. Similarly, like what I said earlier, the normal parry button is circle, which is on the right hand, of course. So your normal strategy, which hasn't really worked for either of this boss or the previous one, is to stay up in their face, parry with L1 and the rebound controls, and then shoot with the right hand and the red analog stick. So I'm playing on console here, of course, and in that circumstance, I believe the control configuration that I'm using is control configuration B, if you decide you want to play around with what I'm doing. And let me just say, like, again, this game regularly is only a couple of bucks to pick up, and if you enjoy these kinds of intense, skill-focused experiences where you just, the purpose is to just push your ability to the limit with the game, I think it's a very fun game with a lot of fun mechanics and a lot of depth to learn. So you can see, because I'm using these charged shots here, the pillars are not able to produce a ton of, you know, blowback projectiles for me to have to counter or dodge from, whereas if I was just using my regular shots, the screen would be comparatively way more full of bullets and things for me to avoid. But it's remained relatively clean and therefore easier to navigate. The downside to using charged shots, because there's always a downside to everything you do in this game, even if it's the right thing, is that the charged shots can only get through so many bullets, so if I shoot at a big cluster like that, then my shot runs the risk of being blocked, whereas if I spam regular shots like this, you can see that they'll just punch through eventually and then land on the target. Okay. So to demonstrate, I'll do that for this last little bit here. Okay. Boom. That's it. So as you saw in that one, he skipped a couple of phases where he didn't do the melee focused phase at the end of the first life bar or at the end of the last one. So some bosses will do that, where they have more of a focus on the at range phase or the melee phase. Okay. Now this one is one of my least favorite to fight against in the entire game. The reasons for that will become apparent as we continue. So this is one of the reasons, is that his, that move that all of them do, where they divide up the screen like that and you have to get to the safe section quickly, his version of that move happens much quicker than I think any other boss. So you have to be much more prepared to make those quick decisions and identify which way you need to go and how you need to manipulate the controls to get there quickly. You'll see me do this quite a bit in this fight and not so much in most of the other fights, which is I'm redirecting a lot of his projectiles back at him. You can do that with, I think, any projectile, but because his move a little bit slower than average, it's a little bit easier to pull off and therefore more worth doing. Although, as you can see, I'm failing quite well at it thus far. See? Comes fast. His attacks also poison you, which is what happened when I was getting hit by those melee strikes there. Where they'll make the screen blurry, and in a game like this where, you know, being able to determine very precise hitboxes and frame perfect movement is quite important. That can be certainly frustrating, not especially devastating, but this is one of the reasons that I dislike this boss, is because he spends so much time, like, unavailable to attack between being underwater, or there's a couple of attacks that we'll see him do later where you just cannot deal damage to him until he's done. So it's quite frustrating to try to fight him in any kind of quick way, and for a game like this it's all about speedrunning. That should be paramount in the design of the fight. Here's one where I just have to wait until this attack ends before I can go back to damaging him.
So much pain.
Oh, that was close. Gotta waggle the sticks. Whew. Okay, we skipped one of his really bad attacks, so that's good. If he had finished that line, he would have gone into it and we would have wasted a bunch of time. I doubt we'll be so lucky on this phase. Okay, here it goes. So see, he just clones himself, and all of these guys are gonna mess with me, and I have to kill all of them before I can go back to fighting the actual boss and attempting to deal damage to him. So this is just... shit. That one was close, man. That was too early on that. Really should have taken that hit, probably. Oh well. We didn't. Okay. Shit. That went right through me? That's neat. So you can actually get in the way of those balls that he shoots when he's sectioning off the stage like this, which obviously will leave you with more room to dash, make the whole thing a little easier. I failed to do so that time. Okay, so we are way behind on time, but we're actually doing quite well on our hits, so that's good. Comparatively for me, of course. Okay. So we go from one of my least favorite bosses to one of my very favorites, which is the Hand here. The Hand, because you can actually be about as aggressive as you want on this guy if you know what you're doing. So that's the key right there, was that interaction that I just had. You can attack him in this phase, and he will counter you, and you can block his counter, and then get right back to the fight. Now, except for when he's busy, his shield will block any gun attacks that I try to do. So this is a fight where you pretty much just focus on using your sword and maximizing your melee damage and your parries. So you gotta have your parries quite good at this point.
Go back.
Whew, that was tight. Trying to be too clever there. Whoops.
Go back while you still can.
When he runs off to the corner like that to charge up his big bands, you have to give him some space to do it, because otherwise if you stay too close he'll just continue to run around the arena forever. So you'll notice that when he does that I kind of back off for a split second so that he can actually get in position and start the attack, which will lock him in place and allow me to interrupt it. That one was much better, huh?
You have given me the chance to teach my son an important lesson, that when good men look away, evil prevails.
See, that's what'll happen, is he'll just continue to run until he's got enough space. So it's best to just back off a bit.
Surrender. You can't win.
Oh. Okay.
We build all of this. We prepared, invested so much.
Now that he's thrown the shield away, I can go to my gun strategy and just chew him up, basically. Okay, when he charges back like that, you can throw a charge shot at him, which will cause him to block, which interrupts his animation again and gets you back to... Because if he fires off that sword beam that he's charging there, that's actually quite difficult to dodge. It comes very quickly, so you want to prevent him from doing it. But regular charge shots, he'll just eat those and continue to... Or excuse me, regular shots, he'll just eat those and continue to charge his blast. So you need to use your charge shot to actually get him to defend, which will interrupt him. And I'll use that same exact strategy in the next phase as well, so.
I will never give up, stranger. The stakes are too high.
Ooh.
You can't win, stranger.
This fight's a good example of the importance of the indicator, because his attacks they come at a pretty offbeat rhythm.
You can't win.
So if you're watching the attack animation itself, you'll be confused. But if you're looking more at the indicator, then you can pull off a good string of blocks. Oh.
I wouldn't let you.
Oh, right here. There we go. That's another reason that I like him so much, is because instead of the regular bullet hell section, his last phase requires you to parry a bunch of melee strikes with the game removes your ability to heal during those, or in exchange for those rather. So you have to parry a long section of melee strikes that have variable timings, and he changes it up a couple times in that sequence. So a little bit different, a little bit more interesting than just doing the same thing like all the other ones do. That one's a great boss, man. Big fan of that one. The Hand. Okay, this one is the Song, and this one is kind of the polar opposite, where this one is almost exclusively focused on almost exclusively focused on the ranged aspect of the combat system, where until the end of the fight she won't even have a melee focused section. You can parry that. I find that a lot of people don't know that. It's quite intimidating to do so, because she comes at you really fast and it deals a lot of damage if you miss, but you can parry it. Need to get better about using L2 to dash, even when I don't need to. Whew. I think I would have screwed up that dash if the game had kept going for another second there. Yeah, like that. Alright, I did dash there. I just didn't do it fast enough. See how she's just skipping those melee duel phases? She will continue to do so until, I think, the end of the next phase. Right on. Yeah, okay. So here's where she'll start melee attacking, but once she starts, she can't do anything else except finish her combo, so you can jump to another section of the... Oh, jeez. See, and then she just has to eat shots while I... that was not my most efficient movement. Alright. her stream there is a little too powerful for my shots to penetrate, so when she's doing that, you just have to kind of run from it. Okay.
You're hurting me so much. You will stop at nothing, right?
Oh, whoops. Did I mention that I haven't played this game in a couple years? I'm glad I still remember as much as I do. That attack was not one of the ones that I remembered. Okay, she's got one of the more difficult bullet hell sections, so you gotta break these 4 pillars, and then every one that you break adds another effect that you'll have to dodge, so you'll see. So each one that I destroy, this section will just get harder. So, Ethan, wear them all down to low health and then break them all at once, you might say. Now, I could be remembering this wrong, because again, been a little while, but I believe that if you leave them alone for too long, they regenerate their health. So if you try to do something like that, the game basically wags its finger at you and tells you, now you gotta deal with the full... Whoa! You gotta deal with the full situation here. Alright, this section is weird, because the game doesn't really tell you, but you have to just hit her physically, and that's how you win. Okay, so you recovered back a little bit of time there, and even took one less hit than our previous run, so that's alright. It was a successful fight then. I know I'm doing it right now, but don't play this game late at night. There's so much neon and bright colors and flashy lights, and the game requires so much visual focus that it's actually quite straining on my eyes this late at night. Okay. This is another one whose name I do not remember. Oh. Okay, so she's a sniper who's going to snipe at us from different platforms, and we need to use her laser sight to track her, corner her into a situation like this, and then have ourselves a fight. But she's not like the song, in that the song, you know, largely ignored the melee aspect of the combat. This fight does not do that, and is actually difficult in both ranged and melee sections. There is specifically her final phase, her bullet hell section at the very end. I would probably say, for me, is the hardest part of this game. The hardest single phase that any boss has. So we need to return to kind of the center so that she can find us quickly. And now I know roughly where she is. Woo! That one's close. Okay.
Really good try, but not quite good enough.
Here's where the fight's gonna change. So we're gonna do the same setup, where she's gonna snipe at us from a distance. But then once we corner her, this time things will be a little bit different. She'll lead us back to the center here, where we'll do the rest of the fight. Jeez. Ah, come on.
Keep your eyes on the prize.
Oh, come on, don't run away. No! Alright, so we lost it. We gotta do it again. Okay.
No one said we had to play fair.
Well, the rest of the fight will just be contested here.
You certainly live up to your reputation.
Alright. So this far, this has been going relatively well. It is unfortunate that we lost her and had to redo that track her down phase at the beginning of the previous. This is another one, as you just saw, where you can attack quite relentlessly, and she'll counter, and you can block her counter, and then just continue the chain. And if you don't do that, or if you fail, like I just did, then she'll periodically have some tricks up her sleeve to prolong the fight. And obviously, this is a speedrun, so we want to get through as quickly as possible. Strictly, were I a better player, you'll notice that on those perfect parries, the enemy is actually stunned for a second, just hold still until you melee attack them. And you can actually shoot them a couple times before that for a little bit of extra free damage, which I'm neglecting to do thus far.
I studied your battle out there. I know your moves. I know what you're capable of. Come on, hit me with it.
Okay. There we go. That was a successful application of what I mentioned earlier. Okay, so this one right here is what I talked about, where
Let's take this to the next level.
there's maybe one other section on one other boss that could compete, but for the most part this is the hardest single part of the game as far as I'm concerned. Not too bad right now, right? It's good that the game gives you plenty of time to
You are not taking
be in the scope there. But you can actually just kind of not have to immediately react to it. Ooh, that was tight. That worked out well. Okay.
I can't fail.
So
This is
typically,
my game.
when I finish that section, I'm quite low on health at that point because I've taken a couple hits from the beams, and you come into this quite low on health, and then have to do this phase where she just stays invisible and strikes at you from angles you can't see. With you have to play it quite perfectly because you're often at such low health at that point. All right, right on. Exactly the same amount of hits as last time I fought her. That's good. Okay. This one is probably my favorite boss in the game, which is the Edge.
Now I will show you what I've learned. Nice.
So you can see his health bar is quite fragile, and his does not have an awful lot of phases or lives.
Let it out. I want to see you shine.
But his damage is quite high. His attacks come up quite quickly.
Watch me.
And this is a better example compared to some of the other ones where you can be constantly pushing the action. You basically never have to just sit around and wait for him to rejoin the fight. Where, even the previous boss, who I like quite a bit, occasionally will go into that where she's just off screen and there's just nothing that you can really do to be pushing the action. That's right. Okay. On his combos here, you actually have to
Focus on the work at hand.
block the whole combo, huh?
Nice.
Nice.
You have more
Okay.
strength.
Gets a little intense here. You can do the whole fight perfectly up to this point and then just get wrecked here because his damage gets pretty crazy when he's all red like this. Oh, that was close, my friends. Whew. Alright, I played a little cocky towards the end there, but ultimately our numbers came out okay, so it's worth it, I guess. Yeah, I could have parried a lot more of those hits and probably still won in the same amount of time. Oh well. Okay. This next boss, the Beat, is not difficult. Probably the second easiest in the game, right after the tutorial boss. But if you get greedy during this fight, it's quite easy to lose a life. Because this is more a platforming challenge than a combat challenge. Which you'll see more as we progress, but if you try to go a little too quick, you can end up running into bullets and fall off ledges. Which is especially true in this one because getting hit often carries with it sort of a double penalty, where you're gonna take the damage, but then you're also going to fall off the ledge, which is more damage.
Why are you here? Why are you doing this?
So right here, you can see that if you... Oh, that was close. Arrgh.
I wanted to be here. Where else would I be? Here is where I can make a difference.
Okay. Not actually shooting at the boss, you can't damage her until these... Oh, balls.
Yes, I am
Until these
paying the price
bigger
for my
platforms anyhow.
It's worth
this phase is even easier than the first one. The first one at least still has you parrying.
I don't understand.
Okay. Whoops. Come on, man. See, that's what I mean. It can be going your way and then just fall off a couple ledges, eat a laser or two, and all of a sudden you've done a 0 KO run and lost your life on the last and easiest boss. This isn't actually the last boss, but... Okay. I don't think you can one-shot her.
Stop! You
Oh.
can't go out there.
There we go. Okay. Moving swiftly along, now we come to the last boss. This is during the sniper boss. I mentioned that there was one other phase that I would say is maybe the hardest in the game, and it's the last phase of this boss, which is fitting because this is the last boss. So once it loads in here, though, this one's very interesting. All of the fights are very interesting, of course, but this one even more so because it puts you in this mech suit where you actually don't have your melee component anymore. And this level is basically just a pure bullet hell compared to the rest of the game, which had the melee combat aspect as well, where that is, except for these little parries here, which are more a way to regain health than to actually do anything significant, because if you kill these robots, they just respawn almost immediately. Ooh.
Ryder, we have always been here for you. Why all this?
Our hit counter is actually really good for this point, at least for my standards.
Your mission was critical. Our survival depended on it.
That was close.
The planet was fit for a simulation, but you got caught. And now this.
So I suppose I'll try to elucidate the story a little bit for you while this is going on, because while this boss's patterns are pretty complicated, the mechanics are quite simple compared to the other ones. There's not really any like hidden ways to manipulate the boss like what I've been doing, so I'll just talk about the narrative so that the dialogue here doesn't just make no sense. So basically, you and this thing that you're fighting here, as well as all the other ones like you who you see in the on the way in the cutscene before this fight, have come to this planet to, like they say, assimilate it. You don't actually know this as the player at the start of the game. This is the scene where you kind of put it all together. But anyways, once you arrive, you're caught and put into this 10-layer prison that you were just in with all the bosses. So you fight your way back out, and in doing so, the character goes on this kind of development journey, even though he's a silent protagonist. He learns to respect the life forms of this planet and comes to decide that destroying their world for the sake of ours is not worth it. So it's a little bit emotionally manipulative in this way, that you don't actually have all of the information that the character does at the start of the game, and so your decision making and your opinions on the story are not, you know, the full picture that even the main character has. But you know, you're not really playing this game for the deep and interesting story. Right, you're playing it, like I said, to see how far you can push the limits of your skill and your capability with the mechanics. Okay, here we go. This is it.
Us to save this world that is not yours. I am disappointed in you, Ryder.
So this starts out fine. Like, this last phase, you'll see, we'll go through multiple different phases. This first one is fine, and actually the last one I would say is quite simple, but there's one in the middle, and you'll know it right away, that is quite difficult, and it's pretty long, and, you know, oftentimes it can deplete your health enough to the point where you have to do the last part of this last phase basically perfectly, because you'll just have so little health after this middle section.
How can you be so defective?
Right here. Come on. See, you just get too nervous about the balls. And this one's quite simple. You can just dash back and forth through it until you can't. But even this one isn't too bad. And then the laser will stop pretty shortly, I think. Yep. And then this part is actually quite easy. I joked about this one at the very beginning, because the strategy that I was using in the first boss is actually the strategy that you use for here, where you kind of have to punch yourself in and out of the safe zone, which is what I was doing in the first boss, but you're actually supposed to jump over that particular section, or the balls that can't be shot through. Okay. That's it. That's Furi, man. So, overall, our time was pretty high, but our hit counter was really good. Just barely 100. So let's see where that leaves us on the leaderboard here. Excuse me. 567. I'm alright with that. I'm alright with that. So that's Furi. As a little encore, I'm gonna do the DLC boss, even though I have basically no idea what its mechanics are. I have fought him before, obviously, but it's been so long, and I've only maybe fought him twice ever, so I really have no idea how it works. Or very little idea, I should say. But we'll do it anyways, just so that I can say that I showed off as much as possible about this game without going into inferior mode. He's got a lot of phases, doesn't he? Oh, that caught me off guard. And I believe the arena floor starts morphing a little later on. Whew! Ooh, that was close.
Now I am.
Ugh. Oh, that's quite good. Oh, whoa. Good opening salvo. Health bar feels much less durable in this phase. Ooh, those spun quickly. That was a good move.
Last time I was
Oh, you were prepared there, huh?
this time you go down.
See, I'm learning. Can't catch me twice unless it's with your basic melee strikes, in which case I am hopelessly lost. Whoa, that's interesting.
Not this time.
Yeah, that thing wasn't helping. That was quite nice. sorry that I'm not talking much. This is actually really good. I'm just having a great time. Alright, let's get serious, bud.
For evil, for demons, for the ones who fell.
This ain't going well thus far. Interestingly, he takes damage during his bullet hell section most of the time, and the game just has you wait until it's over. Oh, almost missed that. Damn. God damn it, I know how to parry in this game. Alright. That was actually a really fun and well-designed boss. Dang. I don't give that one enough credit. That was a great time. Okay, well. That's Furi, and that's most of what I have to say about it, so. If you watch this somewhere down the road, excuse me, I hope that it was entertaining and maybe you learned something about the game, or maybe you decided to give the game a try yourself. That would be the best outcome. So, thank you for watching. Have a good time.